All right, let's do a less artificial example of how we can use the index and options to do something fun. First of all, you'll notice that we've added a caption here. Before we just had the image, so now there's a caption. And the caption, you're going to notice, matches the text that's right here in the list. So I go to air guitars, it's air guitars, open the door, you see open the door, and notice is noticed, notice is noticed. And if I go back to healthy animals, it's healthy animals. So we're using the text part from here to provide a caption for our image. But there's something else that we've done here as well. I mean, so far you haven't seen it, but let's go air guitars. Now the next thing after air guitars, look at that, is going to be open the door. Okay, so I'm going to go to air guitars. Now when I click this, look, it goes to open the door. And it rotates around. It rotates through all the pictures. And as it rotates around, it gives me the right thing here. And watch this. So I'm at air guitars. Watch what happens here when I click. Not only does it take this to open the door, but it sets the select list to have that particular selection as well. So how do we do that? Well, we just use the stuff that we saw in the previous video. Let's take a look here. There's really nothing different down here in the HTML. Here we still have our initialization function, and that's going to be a little more sophisticated. And we have our change function, but for the rotating, that happens when we click the image right here, and so we've added an event listener there. So here are our three functions, and you notice they're very short. First of all, we're using the trick we did last time, except instead of using LST, here I'm using slist. I probably should have stuck with LST, but you know, just showing you different names. I don't know, maybe it's good to help the brain see different stuff. Anyhow, so here we are. When we initialize, we want to start at the very first one. And remember, these have indexes, and the indexes start with 0. So 0 is the index for healthy animals, falling rock is the index for this, and so on. So when I set the selected index to 0, that forces this list here to the very first item. So that's the first thing that's happening. We're making sure it's the very first item that's showing. Now, just to show you how this could change, if I let 4, or let's say 3, if I let 3 be the selected index, okay, and I save that, and I reload, then every time I reload, you know, whatever I did, I would go back to this one because this is 4. So well, this is the fourth one. The index is 3 because the indexes start with 0, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3. So the fourth item has index 3. And so here we are. And so by setting this, we make this the place that we start. Let's go back to 0. That makes more sense. All right, the world is in balance again. So that's what the selected index is doing. It's telling us which one is going to be the start one. Then here, we're taking the value. So once we've set this to 0, we still have all of the file names for the various images here in the value. So we're going to just assign the value of this item, the 0th item, or the current item, and that's the animals one. And then we put our caption in here. And here's how we get our caption. Now, if you come down here, we've had this in here all along. We just haven't been using it. So here's our figure. Here's the image in the figure. And here is the caption. And we've not been doing anything with that before, but its ID is cap. So if we come back here, when we say utl.eid cap.innerHTML, we're now going to be writing to the inner HTML of this caption. And what are we writing? Well, here's our slist.options. You saw this. slist.selectedIndex, so it goes to the selected index, and the text. And the text is the text that appears for that option here in the list. And so we just copy that text and use it up here as a caption. And so that's what we did when we did the initialization here. We have two other functions to look at. Both of them are event handlers. Now selecting the pick is actually pretty easy. Again, here we're using a variable to hold that. Here, we're changing the source to slist value, and that we did before. There's nothing different there. So whenever we change, this is what's going to happen on change. So if I change it, say to there, to open door, then it's got, it took the value, which is now the value of the fourth item, the item with the index 3, and it assigns it to the source of the image. And then here, for the caption, we do just the same thing that we did up here. In fact, it's exactly the same code. So I just take the caption, it's inner HTML, and I'm going to go to the list. I'm going to get the options of the list. I'm going to get the currently selected index. I mean, the selected index tells me the index of the currently selected item, and I'm going to grab the text of that item and put it here. So in this case, the text is open the door, so we get open the door. All right, now what about rotating the pick? Well, that's actually pretty easy as well. This is the same as the others. This part here. If you look at this code here, and you look at this code here, they're identical. So there's no change from this code to this code. The only difference is that we have to change the index. And the way we change the index is we go up by 1, and then we use mod, and we use the length of the list. So the length of the list is 5. So when slist.selectedIndex plus 1 gets 5, the mod will wrap it back around to 0. This is the same thing we've done before when you were rotating images. So there's no real difference in principle. Now we're doing it with the selected index instead of something else, but otherwise it's the same. So here we have the selected index. Here we take the current selected index, we add 1 to it, and then we mod by the length of the list, and that ensures that our indexes will spin in between. They'll go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, back to 0. And so it'll just keep spinning 0 through 4, 0 through 4, 0 through 4, 0 through 4. And that's what allows us, so here we are at 0, right? And this is what allows us then to click and go to the next thing, because we added 1. We click, go to the next thing, we added 1 again. So now we're on index 2, right? Our index was 0, then 1, then we'd be on index 2. And in fact, we can take a quick look at that. And it might be worth doing that with our developer tools. And we'll just come in here and we'll just write out to the console. Console selected index plus, and we'll just output the selected index. And we'll drop it right in there. And oops, we'll close. And we'll save. And we'll reload. And now watch what happens as I start clicking the pick. Right? The selected index was 0, right? We were here at Healthy Animals and that had the index 0. Now we're at Falling Rock. And watch as I keep clicking. The index goes to 2, which is the index 3, 4, and now when it adds 1 this time, it's going to reach 5, and remember we're modding by the length, which is 5, so that'll flip it back to 0, and there it went. So you can just see how we just wrap the index around. And I think I'll leave that console log in here. It might be useful if you're using this or playing with it. So that's an actual functioning, realistic example of how we can use things like the selected index, the options, the text of an option, and so forth. We're using the text of the option to act as a caption. We're using the selected index to wrap and also to jump to places.